This video will go over BiblioBoard Creator in depth, but first we're looking at BiblioBoard Library. This is the homepage of the Travels in Iceland Land of Fire and Ice anthology, which I'll demo in BiblioBoard Creator. So first I want to show you how it looks on the web. Up top I have my title and an image and a description of the anthology overall. Then in the center I have my collections, and further below that I have my content type categories. I'll go over overview and highlights later on. Now I'll be jumping back to this page a couple different times in the process to show you how the changes you make in Creator will be reflected in BiblioBoard Library. And this is BiblioBoard Creator. This is the BiblioBoard Creator homepage. Every time you log in using your unique username and password, you will be brought to this screen. These are the three phases that we separate the process into. First up is discovery, and this is where you gather the content for your anthology. Second phase is enhancement, where you take a look at each individual piece of content, pick out thumbnail images, work on metadata, and make those collections. The final phase is marketing, where you take a step back and consider how you want to present this anthology to the public for viewing. This could also be called the packaging stage. Further on the left, we have this feedback button. It'll appear on every page in Creator, and you can click that tab to be brought to this page where you'll enter a subject, the message, and you can even attach files if you want to include screenshots. Then click send, and it'll be sent to our customer support staff. This could be any technical problems you're having with the website or any questions about how to use Creator properly, and our staff will get back to you as quick as possible. Once you're done entering your message, you can exit out of that, and you'll be brought back to whatever page you were last on. Finally, I want to point out these four buttons in the top right corner. The first one is Dashboard, and clicking on that will bring you back to this home page at any time in your process. Next is New Anthology, which you'll click to get started. It'll prompt you to enter a working title, and this will be able to be changed later on, so there's no pressure to make it anything great. As long as it makes sense to you, you can go ahead and enter that here. I'll use Test for this example, and then click Create. The final button is the Training button, which brings you to a new tab containing all of our training documentation. The first section is Training Guides, which contains this video's content, but in written form with screenshots. Next is Resources, and those contain FAQs and some examples of the text you'll produce later on. And finally, Videos, this one as well as a couple others. Back in Creator, you may have noticed I have 4 copies of the same anthology, and that's just because I want to show you guys all the different phases. Normally, if you create one anthology, it'll just appear once in this top row, and any additional projects you're working on will appear below that. Now I'll go ahead and open up the first phase, which is Discovery, and that's where you'll add your content in one of 2 ways. You can upload it manually one by one using the Upload panel, or search for it in bulk. Then you can review it, at which point you are finished with Discovery. Now the first thing you do in Upload is select your media type from the list of available options. So we support books, articles, images, other documents, audio, and video. For books, we support PDF and EPUB files. For articles, we support PDF. For images, we support PNG, JPEG, and GIF. Now, other document is kind of a catch-all for anything that doesn't squarely fit into the other categories, so it supports all of the above media files as well as MP3, which is what we use for audio. Now finally, video is a bit of a special case, so instead of uploading it, you embed it using a code from YouTube, Vimeo, or the Internet Archive. Now as an example, I'm going to walk you through books, all these metadata tabs that you're seeing. So first you select the file from your computer using this button here. Once you've selected the appropriate file, you can start entering metadata. Now any metadata field with an asterisk is required, and anything without an asterisk is not required but is highly encouraged because the more metadata the merrier. So you can go ahead and enter your title, and if you have it, the subtitle as well. And then select language from the list of available options. As you can see, we also have no linguistic content for image files. Next thing to enter is the publication date, and we enter that in month, day, year format. A lot of books only have the year entered, so that's fine. You can enter 0101 and then the book's year. And for anything that you're really not sure when it's from, you can enter a date you think might be kind of right, and then go ahead and click that circa box. Next up is license type, and we support the following options. We have public domain, Creative Commons Attribution, Creative Commons Attribution Share Alike, Creative Commons Attribution No Derivatives, I am the copyright holder, and I have licensed this content from the copyright holder. Once you've selected that, the only time that attribution is going to become required is for Creative Commons licenses. And source URL refers to anything that is available to the public on the World Wide Web. You can paste that URL here. The next thing to enter is the description. And this is a 1 to 6 sentence description of this piece of content. Now this box has a very high word count, so if you want to go ahead and enter more, you can. If you want to enter less, you also can. It's totally up to you. Once you've entered that description, you can move on to book info. Now this third tab is actually going to change depending on which media type you've selected. So for books, it asks you to enter 1 primary category, though you're encouraged to enter up to 3. If you have the information, you can also enter the publisher, place of publication, as well as the volume and edition in Arabic numerals. Now the changes you're going to see in this tab are going to be minimal. For things like articles, you'll be asked to enter a periodical. For images and other multimedia files, you'll be asked to enter keywords, and other documents simply asks what type of document it is. The next thing I'll enter is this contributor info tab. Now if I don't have a contributor, I can just leave this blank if it's unknown, but if I do know the contributor, I can add them by clicking Add Contributor. The first thing I choose is their type, be it person or corporation, and then I select their role from this list of available options. Now we've entered a lot of different ones to correspond to the different media types, so you should be able to find the appropriate role. For anonymous contributors, I can simply click this checkbox here. But if I have a name, I can go ahead and enter that. Now, last name is the only field that's required, but if I have anything else, the prefix, first name, middle name, last name, and suffix, I can enter as much as I have. The final part is this bio tab, and again, this is purely optional, but I could add a biography of this contributor. It could be as long or short as I'd like. Now, for an example, I'll enter a person, an author. Let's say Charles Dickens. I entered Charles even though it wasn't required because I had it handy, and now I click OK. If I hover over it, I can get a preview of what I just entered. Clicking the X will delete it, and this button will allow me to edit that. Now I'll add another contributor, let's say this time a corporation. Maybe it's a corporate editor of one of Charles Dickens' books. It's an example, so I'll just enter corporation name. And click OK. Now that gets generated. Now if I have an additional contributor, I can keep adding them by clicking the green button until I've got them all there. And then I can customize the order that they appear in by clicking and dragging them and dropping them. And once I've entered that and all of my other metadata, I can click the blue upload button, and this is added to my anthology. Now the form will clear, and I can go back and select my next media type to continually upload my items one by one. Now the other way to add content to my anthology is by searching. This searches through a database of about 4 million different public domain books and articles. Because this is a Travels in Iceland anthology, I'll go ahead and search Travels Iceland. Click search. Now I'll get my results. I can see the title. I can also look at what media type they are, as well as their status, and I can remove or add items simply by clicking these buttons here. I can hover over the titles to get more metadata, or even click on it to be brought to a new tab of the original item itself, where I can scroll through, get a good feel for the book, and see if I want to add it. You might also have noticed this British Library tab. This is the British Library's institutional repository. My search terms have been searched here as well, and the features are the same. I could hover over a title for more metadata, click on it to be brought to a preview, and I can also add and remove them by simply clicking. Now, I can only see the British Library's institutional repository because I'm in a British Library demo account, but your library could also sync their institutional repository into the search feature of Creator as long as they have a institutional repository with a public API. Now, another way to search is through the advanced search. I can filter by title, contributor, text, language, publication year, and I can also customize which repositories are being searched. Once I've added all of my content, I can take a look at it in review. Good news, this isn't a stage where you have to do any work. It's just a good place to check in with your content, which can be really useful if you're working on this over several days, weeks, months, years even. I can search for a term to see if I've added something. I could filter by media type. I can again hover over for more metadata or click for a preview. And I can also add and remove things with a simple click of a button. And once I'm satisfied with the content in my anthology, I'm actually done with discovery, so I can go to Finish and click on Finish Discovery. Now normally, if I clicked this button, it would bring me automatically to the first page of enhancement, but because this is a demonstration account, I'm going to back on out and open it up in the next phase. More good news, the first part of enhancement is another place where you don't have to do work. It's just another place to check in with your content. It's the content status phase, and we give you these buffers on either end because in between discovery and enhancement, your content goes through an in-between processing phase where your content is ingested into our system for use later on in the process. This processing stage can take between 4 to 6 hours, but if it takes more than 48, maybe send us a feedback message. As each item clears processing, it will appear as awaiting review quality, which is the next stage of enhancement. And the content status column also notes which phase it's in, be it review quality, describe, or awaiting collection assignment. Again, I can hover over for metadata or add and remove with a click of the button. Now let's look at review quality, the next place where we really have to do some work. Review quality is where we choose those thumbnail images that we saw in library. I'll show you an example of both a book and a video. For audio and video files, all you have to do here is make sure a preview gets generated. If it does, go ahead and click play and make sure something plays. As long as it does, you're good. At this point, because you had to manually upload all audio and video files, you wouldn't have added something unless you knew it was a good source and you really wanted it in your anthology. So you can go ahead and click Save and Accept. Now, image files are going to be just about the same with the preview generated here, but they will appear in the exact quality and size that will appear in the end product, so make sure it's not pixelated or too small, and then you can just go ahead and hit Save and Accept. You might have noticed these checkboxes here. They also appear in the next phase, so I'm going to hold off and explain them then. If your content is of low quality for any reason, you can also go ahead and reject it by clicking here. But once you've rejected or saved all of your items, you'll be brought back to this page here. Now this is a book, as you can see. It's a multi-page file. So here we're looking for a couple different things, the first of which is a thumbnail image. This here is my thumbnail, as you can tell by this blue thumb icon here, and I chose it because it was colorful, it had a nice picture. It's actually the cover of the book, so I thought it was a good choice. Now these thumbnails get reflected in BiblioBoard Library by representing each piece of content. So these that we're looking at are all thumbnail images, and as you can see, they're not all covers. When the cover isn't a good candidate, you can go ahead and look for another visual item to choose as the thumbnail image, but if there really isn't a good choice, just choose the title page and that's totally fine. Now to choose it, you go to the page, you can right click, and then choose Set as Thumbnail. You could also click on the page and mouse over to this checkbox here, or as a handy shortcut, you can click on the page and type B on your keyboard for boy, and that will add it as the thumbnail image. Next, I want to look for pages to hide. Now I hid this page because it was blank. We actually have a full list of pages to be on the lookout to hide on our training documentation under Creator 101. As I scroll down, you'll see that I want to hide blank pages. I want to hide misscanned pages. I want to hide extraneous pages, pages with barcodes, color calibrations, and although it is quite funny to find, I do want to hide hands. I also want to hide any pages with logos not associated with me or my institution. And I'd hide it by right-clicking, selecting Hide Page. I could click on the page, mouse over to these checkboxes, or as a shortcut I could use H, as in hide, on my keyboard. I can navigate through these pages using my keyboard, the arrow keys there, or my mouse, and the next thing I'm looking for is the title page. This is only used for internal purposes, so it doesn't have to be fancy, just whatever has the most metadata. I select it by right-clicking, set as title page, clicking on the page, and using this checkbox here, or by using the shortcut T for title on my keyboard. Now for things like articles that might not have a cover page, I can just use the first page as my title page and thumbnail if there aren't any better options. The last thing I'm looking for are pages to add to my visual browse stream. One use of the visual browse stream is on the BiblioBoard home page. I can go to a visual browse view. This is a Pinteresty looking view that pulls visually appealing pages that allows users to stumble across cool pieces of content. The other use of it is within a book. So if I open up this book here, these are visual browse pages. The third way these are used are when choosing collection and anthology images. I'll talk more about those in a bit, but keep that in mind when adding items to your visual browse stream. To add an item, I right-click, add to visual browse stream, or I can click on the page, go to these checkboxes, or the shortcut is to click V for visual on my keyboard. Now I don't have to add anything to my visual browse stream if I don't want to, and if I do want to, there's no limit to how many pages I add. It's completely up to you. I added this one because it's actually this lady here. It's the author of the book, and I thought that was cool. As I keep going through, you can see I hid a couple more blank pages, and I added this item to my visual browse stream because it was an attractive looking map. As I scroll down, more and more pages will appear, and once I've gone through every page, I can click Save and Accept, or again, I can reject and remove for any reason. Once I've done so, I can go back to the Review Quality page. Now I cannot access an item in Describe, the next stage, until I've completed it in Review Quality. But once I've done all of my items, I can move on to Describe. To show you Describe, I'm going to go ahead and open up that book we just looked at in Review Quality. Now, Describe is where you take a second look at that metadata you entered in Discovery Upload. If you added something to your anthology using Discovery Search, either through our database or your own repository, this will be a time to take a look at that metadata as well. Now, the nice thing about Describe is that that title page we just chose is generated here. I can zoom up on the page to get a closer look, say maybe at the date. Let's see, 1894. Did I get that right? 1894. Okay, great. I can also scroll through the pages, maybe get to the table of contents to check out what kind of things are in here. The metadata tabs themselves are going to be exactly the same as what we saw in Upload. Info, description, book info, contributor information. And if I entered them in Upload, I don't need to re-enter them here. I can simply take a second look and make sure it all looks good. Now if I added it from Search, either via our database or your own repository, that metadata might not be formatted correctly. So check out the title, make sure that looks good. They won't have any description at all, so this will be the moment to type up that description. And verify the book info and the contributor info. The real work in this step is in these checkboxes at the bottom. These are the same ones that I breezed over in Review Quality. The first one says highlight this piece of content, and I simply check or uncheck it. And that refers to the special section in the end anthology, this highlights section down here. I'll click into it, and as you can see, each item has a special purple ribbon really drawing attention to this piece of content. So you're required to choose at least 6 items, but you can choose more if you'd like, and these are really the superstars of your anthology. We recommend that the descriptions for highlighted content are a little bit lengthier. Now the next one is mark this item as free, and to explain that I'm going to give you a bit of a history on the company, BiblioLabs. So when we first started out, we were dealing with historical content and we were getting it to users through an iPad-only consumer app. anyone with an iPad could download the app for free and then buy anthologies one by one for a set price. Before they bought it, we like to mark one item as free just so that they could check the content out and see if it's something they really wanted to spend their money on. Now these days, we're mostly working with libraries, in which case users get access to the anthology through a subscription that their library pays for rather than them buying them one by one. Even if you're only participating in the library-only app, you will still be required to mark one item as free. This won't be reflected anywhere unless it's supposed to be. We have both options available to you, so it's a good thing to talk about with your point of contact at BiblioLabs to determine where you want your content to appear. The final checkboxes allow this content to be downloaded, and this will be checked or unchecked at the anthology level. This refers to if the end user is able to download this piece of content and redistribute it at will. This really comes down to your licensing agreement for your content, and although it will be checked or unchecked at the anthology level, you can customize it at each item level by clicking here. Once you've checked the appropriate boxes for this item, you can go ahead and select Save and Accept, or again, Remove for any reason. Once you've completed Describe for this piece of content, it will appear as completed in the status column. And once you've completed all of your items, you can move on to Collections. Now, Collections refers to that center row on the anthology homepage here, and you'll determine what these are called, what the image is that represents them, what order your collections appear in, what content goes in which collection, and what order that content appears in. As you can see, I've already generated the collections that were in this Travels in Iceland anthology, and I did that by clicking this green Add Collection button. I added a collection name, as well as a one-sentence description of the collection, and then I selected that image. Now, I could either upload it from my computer or access that visual browse stream that we talked about earlier. As well as pulling from each individual page of a book, it also pulls all image files that you've uploaded. You can scroll through and decide which image fairly represents this collection. Once you make your choice, you can go ahead and click it, and click Select. Now you'll be brought to this internal crop feature, which allows you to resize which portion of the image you'd like to be your collection image, and once you're satisfied, you can go ahead and click Crop. And this collection will get generated. Now, once I have all of my collections, I can go ahead and add a piece of content by right-clicking and sending to the appropriate collection. I could also click on that item and then drag it and drop it into the appropriate collection. If I'm working with a lot of different items, I can select multiple items by holding down Shift on my keyboard and then clicking multiple items. And again, I can right-click and send all of them to the appropriate collection. Or I can hold down Shift and select multiple items and then drag them all and drop them into the appropriate collection. Now, every piece of content has to go into a collection, and a piece of content can only go into one collection. You're required to have at least 4 collections, but you're welcome to have more. And if one collection only has one piece of content in it, that's fine. It's really up to you. Once I've sorted them, I can organize them by title or publication date, or I can create a customized order by dragging and dropping within that collection. If I need to, I can hover over an item for more metadata. I could also hover over the collections themselves and get a preview of them, and in fact they too can be customized in which order they appear in by dragging and dropping. Now let's see, in the end anthology they had guides and handbooks followed by landmarks, then journals and travelogues, and sagas and stories, so let's make that order. First is guides and handbooks, second is landmarks, let's see, journals and travelogues, is that third? Yep, okay. And once I've got my collections looking the way I want them to look, I'm actually finished with enhancement, and I can go to Finish Enhancement. Again, ordinarily, I would be automatically routed to the first page of marketing, but I'm going to back out and open it up. And the first page of marketing is Anthology Image. This is where you choose this image here, and the image also appears when you're browsing on BiblioBoard. These images are anthology images, so kind of the cover of your anthology. And again, you choose it by uploading or by accessing the visual browse stream, and in either case, you'll be brought to another internal crop feature. You can go ahead and click save, and I want to point out a couple more creative examples we've seen. If you're dealing with a lot of different content and you're not sure which image to go with, feel free to make a collage. You could even include your logo in a large format if you'd like. Or you can just choose one image from your anthology that fairly represents the entire thing, like these two here. Now, the next phase is logos, and this is where you can upload your logos. They'll appear here when browsing. Once you've opened up the anthology, they appear here on the anthology home screen. Now, you don't need to upload logos unless you want to, but if your institution does have logos and you need help resizing them, you can contact our design staff to make sure they fit into these particular pixel sizes. The next phase is Market Anthology, and this is where you can edit that title that you entered way back when. You can also add a subtitle and an abbreviated title for offline viewing. This description is similar to the item descriptions that we entered earlier, but this time it refers to the anthology overall. This text appears here on the anthology home screen, so it's fairly prominent. We recommend writing about a paragraph, though you're welcome to write more or less if you so choose, and maybe talk about what type of content is in your anthology, how much content, where it comes from, something like that. The next thing to enter is SEO, and that's for search engine optimization. Enter some keywords so that users of Google and other search engines can find your anthology. Then SEO description, which is a one-sentence description of your entire anthology. And audience description, which is a sentence that begins with, "This collection is ideal for individuals interested in," and you can fill in those blanks. This overview refers to this special section over here on BiblioBoard Library Overview, and this is what the British Library chose to write. As you can see, their first section is more about their library, and the second section is more about their collaboration with us. You could choose to do something similar, but this space can really be filled out however you'd like. We have some examples in our training documentation under Resources. We have this page for example anthology overview, and we also have some example anthology descriptions. So maybe check these out before you write these items. We provide special headings if you'd like to break these up into different sections. And the final thing to do is choose categories. Now this refers to those subject categories found on the BiblioBoard homepage. And these help people browse through the categories to find your anthology. You're required to choose one, and we encourage you to select up to 4 from the list of available options. And once you've done all this, you can go ahead and click Save. The next phase is curator information. You can enter some information about yourself as a curator of this anthology and more about your organization, and then click Save. This is an optional phase. The next phase is pricing. First thing you can do is select a release date for your anthology to be published on BiblioBoard, and then you can select a price. Now, this refers to the iPad-only consumer app, and if you are only participating in BiblioBoard Library, you will still need to select a price, but it won't be reflected anywhere. It only is reflected if it's supposed to be. And once you've done that, you can go ahead and click Finish and Finish Marketing. Now, before you click that button, stop for a second. Think, did I add everything to my anthology that I wanted to? Are all my pieces of metadata looking good? Are all my collections looking good? If you need to change anything, you can do so by clicking back to Discovery or Enhancement here. As long as you've saved everything on a page-by-page level, that information will be stored and will be there when you return. The same is true if you've only gone as far as Enhancement. You can still return back to Discovery. But once you're sure you've added everything that you wanted to add and everything's looking good, go ahead and click that button. Once you do, your anthology is sent to our internal review process, and instead of appearing blue and clickable, it will appear black and unclickable, and it will say the phase is Manager QA. This is a 1 to 2 week process when our team is looking at every piece of content you've added on all the devices that we support as well as the web version. They're looking at all the metadata that you've entered and all those sentences you wrote as descriptions, and making sure everything appears in high quality, there aren't any typos, there aren't any mistakes. Although this will make it a little bit harder for you to click into your anthology, our editorial team will be in frequent contact with you. They'll let you know any feedback they have, and you can let them know any changes you'd like to make. At your request, they can even give you access to a special web preview so you can look at how your anthology will appear on the web. And once everyone is satisfied with how the anthology is looking, it will be published and it will appear on BiblioBoard Library. The anthology creation process is complete. Congratulations!